Welcome to episode 152 of Beyond the Brick. I'm Joshua Hanlon.
And I'm Matthew Kay.
And this episode of Beyond the Brick is brought to you by Brickmania.com. Our featured kit this week is the IS-2 Russian Heavy Tank, and this is a really detailed, very well-designed Russian tank that Brickmania has made a kit of. It's really awesome, all the decals and the little details they were able to get in this kit. So I definitely encourage you to check this out. I'll put a link to it in the description so you can check that out and go to Brickmania.com to see all the other awesome products they sell. Now, joining us on the show tonight, we're very happy to have Mark Kelso. He is 47 years old, he is an artist, and he is a member of Virtual Lug. So it's great to have you on the show, Mark.
Hey guys, nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
And for those of you who might have seen some of our Brickworld Indie coverage that we've been posting, we posted a few videos from there. We were able to interview Mark there about a couple of his builds. We've released his interview with his big giant Halo ship, which we'll be talking a little bit about later in this show as well. So if you haven't checked that out, I'll put a link to that video in the description as well so you can get a little more in-depth look at that build. But Mark, if you just want to start off by talking a little bit about your history, like I mentioned, you're a member of Virtual Lug. You want to talk a little bit about how you first came to join them and some of what they do?
Yeah, sure. VLUG is a group of guys that, at the core, were a lot of MOCpages for a few years, and we've all kind of branched out, and certainly we've gained more members from other areas. Now, it's an organization that actually kind of spans the globe, which is, I guess, sort of unique in the lugs. But you know, a lot of us at MOCpages were going to Brickworld in Chicago, and that's where we started doing some collaborations. And I think it was probably from those collaborations where VLUG was really born. We discovered that we had an absolute blast hanging out with one another and sharing ideas and looking at one another's creations. And then, of course, you know, we started doing these collaborations, and it went from, yeah, we've got a little bit of an idea where we might do something once a year to let's spend the entire year doing this. And to be honest, a good friend of mine, Chris Phipson, he is just a bull in a china shop in a good way. I mean, he gets this idea and he just runs with it. And before you know it, everybody's jumping on board, and you go from having this little mock, which is kind of a fun, cute idea, to this massive project, which requires all kinds of input and all kinds of builders, and they always turn out just insane. And so, you know, the first couple of years, certain builders were really creating a lot of input, and Chris was one of those guys that kind of led the charge on that. And then VLUG grew, you know, partially with the popularity of the builds, but also with the personalities that are in there. It's a really fun group. These guys are just awesome. So they hooked me early on through MOCpages, and they're great guys. So it's much about the people as it is the building process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always one of the highlights of going to Brickworld Chicago for me every year is looking forward to what Virtual Lug brings, and then just talking to all the Virtual Lug members while we're there. It's always a really awesome time there. So that you guys do you're kind of well known for doing your one massive build there, collaborative build at Brickworld Chicago. Are there other builds you guys try to do together besides Brickworld Chicago, or how does that work?
Yeah. I mean, some of the builders will do things on the West Coast when there's an opportunity, or they'll show up, you know, up in Seattle. And I don't know. We may have had some representation on the East Coast as well. But for the most part, still, Chicago is kind of the highlight, and that's where so many of us congregate, that we're able to really, I guess, do a powerhouse build. You know, if you've got 30 people that are coming to a convention and we can all contribute, then you know you've got something that's really going to knock people's socks off. And so that's the hub for VLUG right now is Brickworld in Chicago, and you know, we've got another one this year where we're really hoping to knock it out of the park. We always like to do storytelling, and we've got another story this time that I'm really looking forward to showing everybody. So it should be good.
Sounds good. Yeah, definitely give us something to look forward to then for anyone making it out to Brickworld Chicago. Should be another awesome Virtual Lug build there.
Totally. We'll do our best. We'll try.
And so then, if you just want to talk about a little bit of your broader Lego history as well, did you play with it as a kid, and did you have a dark age and get back into it as an adult? How did that work
Yeah,
for you?
yeah. So it's probably a similar story to what a lot of builders will tell you. When I was young, I was an only child, so I didn't have brothers and sisters to go out and play with and all that stuff. And I spent a lot of time, in my room just creating. And my parents and grandparents were really supportive of the creative stuff, of using pencils and paper, and I eventually became an artist. And Lego was a big part of that. And then I also was a dancer and a guitar twirler, believe it or not. It was kind of weird hobbies. But by the time I got really into it, I was actually competing at national and world championship levels when I was like about 16, 17, somewhere along those lines. Well, that's when the Lego went to the sidelines and disappeared. And I think that was maybe like in 1986 or 87. So that's when I went into that dark age. And every Christmas, as an adult, I would pull out Lego and just build a little creation. It was usually a set that I had left. And then in 2007, I discovered the online community through MOCpages, and I discovered Bricklink, and oh man, it just exploded from there. It went from being one little build, once a year at Christmas time, is kind of a sentimental thing, to full-blown madness, staying up all night, ridiculous orders on Bricklink, and I saw some builders, Eric Marsegi's Venator class Star Destroyer, just blew me out of the water. It was this Lego builder was maybe 8 feet long or something like that. Oh, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to build big ships like that, and that stuck with me. I'm still doing it, to this day. I just love doing the space theme and these big ships that are almost as realistic, or they're as realistic as I can make them. And the goal is to make them so well done texturally, proportions, and that when you put proper lighting and so forth on them, they don't even look like Lego. They look like a model or something that you might see, from digital design or something, where it kind of goes beyond that material.
It's like a movie prop at that point, almost, right?
Yeah. That's the goal. I mean, I never always get there. I'm never totally satisfied, but I'm always trying to build with such a degree of detail where it goes beyond being Lego and it looks like it's made out of something else. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the big challenge for me. But anyway, that's kind of off topic here. But when I saw the shifts back in 2007, that was really what got me back into it, and I've been building consistently ever since.
Yeah, so you kind of right when you first started out, were going for the big prize was like the 8-foot spaceships. You didn't want to start small, just go run.
No, I mean, no, it's like go big or go home, right? No sense whatsoever, none whatsoever. Because if I had known what I was getting myself into, when I started the first big one that I did, it was General Grievous's invisible hand, and it was about 6 feet long. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, and I really didn't have a whole lot of skill at that point. So I didn't feel like I did. So I didn't know too many techniques that I could use, and I was really kind of fumbling along. I mean, it was a lot of fun because I was rediscovering Lego, and by the time I got back into it, so much had changed, and there were so many new pieces and so much more that you could do with it. It was just this whole new world, It was just fantastic, and so I obsessed over it. And like I said, I just got this thing where it's part of my personality or nature or whatever, but it's go big or go home. Do it big, do it right, or don't bother. Probably not the best idea a lot of times, but that's just the way it is. We roll with it, right?
Yeah.
Totally.
Now you work full time as an artist right now. Were you doing that type of work in 2007 when you got into the Lego community? And if so, how did that influence your outlook on Lego?
Yeah, I've always been an artist, I guess. I went from high school to art school, and then right out of art school, I had my first one-man show, and just continued to do the art full time since that time, which was like in 1997 or whatever. So when 2007 came along and I started getting into building as an adult, I was bringing with it some of the things that I think about in my paintings. a sense of balance within a composition, looking at value contrast and color contrast and edges, textural elements within the build. All of these fundamentals that make for good paintings, a lot of the times will look for in my creations. And I did a landscape piece of it years ago that I'm real happy with. That was rock, and I was so happy with the rock. And part of the reason why was because I used some of these concepts that I would use in a painting. If I'm doing a painting, I want emphasis in one area or another, and so you might leave some areas blank, or you might leave them far less detailed, and then focus your detail in certain areas for visual interest or to guide the eye. And this is how I approach the rock in this particular construction. This is how I approach my ship builds. I look for certain areas where I want focus. I want other areas to be where the eye can just pass right over it, so I don't put a lot of detail in it. And I really do think about these creations a lot in the same way that I would, think about my painting.
Okay.
It's ingrained, so I guess I take it with me wherever I go.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. It's interesting that you can kind of merge them like that and have similar lines of thinking when they're doing painting or Lego, whatever it might be. And obviously, like you were saying, when you spend 3 or 4 years on a build, you really have time to put a lot of that thinking into it as far as where you want to really put emphasis in the build and things of that nature.
Yeah, and I do that. I will put together a very large portion of the build and really look at it, and I'll look at the textures, and I'll look at the negative space, look at the positive space, and all of the forms, and I may tear it down and redo it several times, shifting those details here and there. So it's pretty labor intensive. I'm a really slow builder. You won't see a lot of work coming out of my portfolio, so to speak. Other builders might have literally 100 builds since 2007 or whatever, and I've got maybe 20 or 30, and most of those are just what I call small sketches. So the major builds are there might be only like 10 of them in that period of time. But it's worth it to me because I like that level of detail, and it takes time to me to be able to do that. So it's worth spending 3 or 4 years on a build to get it exactly the way I want it.
I think it's something a lot of people really. Obviously, there's not too many people that kind of maybe do that more or less. It sort of requires a commitment, to execute on something for that long a period of time.
Yeah, it definitely takes, I guess, some patience.
Yeah.
But the thing is, for me, when I'm working on a creation, okay, this is a perfect example. I've got this is what's left of my last ship, but this is just a tiny little portion of a 3-year-long project. But this, in and of itself, was a fun build, and you could stick this on several things. This could be the top of a submarine. This could be the bottom of the spaceship. It could be a wing element turned sideways, and I enjoy that. So if I'm working on a project for 3 years, there's all of these mini builds within one massive build. And so I don't feel like I'm just building one project for 3 years or 9 months or 2 years or whatever. I feel like I'm doing multiple builds, but they're all just very consistent because they eventually become one massive construction. Maybe the same way somebody would work on a train set or a city scene. I'll do the bridge of a ship might take a month, and then I'll move on to the next section. It might take a couple months. And it's all one build, but they feel like separate ones. So I don't get bored or I don't get burned out.
Yeah, so I guess if you kind of think about it like components or something like that, it sort of kind of puts it in a new perspective almost. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Is the smaller components of a larger project, and each one of those components is a build in and of itself.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that works really well. And since you held up a piece of your giant Spirit of Fire ship there, I think we'll start off by talking about that build, which unfortunately just met an untimely end here recently. But if you want to give a little bit of a background of that build and kind of talk about how you build it and things like that.
Yeah. I had done a couple other larger ships. I mentioned the Invisible Hand, which is probably my most popular ship. If you go to MOCpages, and it's the one that's gotten the most hits. I was looking to do another one a few years ago, and Lee Jones and I were talking about doing some big ships, and we got to talking about the Halo ships, and we both kind of liked those ideas. He was really interested in the Pillar of Autumn, and I thought, okay, I think I'm gonna look at Halo as well. It really attracted me because I'd seen so many Star Wars ships done that I kind of wanted to stay away from Star Wars. I felt like that had been done so much that I really didn't have quite as much to offer. And I still wanted to find something that was fairly popular, that a lot of people would recognize and respond to. And so, you know, with my discussions with Lee, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, Halo is a very popular game. I enjoy it. So there's motivation personally. And then I started doing some digging, and I found the Spirit of Fire. And there wasn't a whole lot of reference material on it. That was the downside. But nevertheless, I thought there's enough here where I can put this build together. And I don't know if a lot of other builders do this. I don't see it quite to the extent that I do this anyway. I will do very lengthy, in-depth posts of my works in progress. And I was maybe 9 months into the Spirit of Fire, and I had posted a couple work-in-progress posts on MOCpages. And the guy that was in charge of creating this ship with the video game contacted me and said, "Oh, I saw this build. This looks great. Would you like to have the blueprints?" And so he sent me the blueprints, and that gave me everything that I needed really to work out the proportions of the ship correctly and continue on with it. So
always convenient when that happens, right?
Don't you love that? Yeah, yeah.
And it happens all the time, of course.
Yeah, and you know, and I'm thinking now about my next project, and I'd like to do another Halo ship. To be honest, I had such a good time with it, and I really like the design. Something else that I don't know if other builders do this or not, but I am always thinking about how will whatever I'm building translate with the material. So Lego translates to Halo ships very nicely. There's these rectangular forms. There are these 45-degree angles. There are all of these wonderful lines and shapes that translate really well to Lego, at least with the UNSC stuff. But if you've got ships that are more rounded or smoother, it's much more difficult for them to translate into Lego. So I'm always looking at those things, and I've seen other ships, the Infinity in particular, that I think would really translate well into Lego. And so I think I'm probably going to pursue that next, now that the Spirit of Fire has had its time. So we may see that on the horizon, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is just a really incredible build. I was very happy to see it in person at Brickworld Indy here before it met its unfortunate end. But it's just such a massive build. Just looking at photos doesn't really do it justice. Seeing it in person is so cool. So as you were doing this, what was some of the hardest parts of this build for you?
Gravity. Man, just gravity. You know, because I really didn't want any portion of the ship to have studs, or even the underside of the Lego showing where it didn't fit with the detail and the texture. So everything had to be studs all over the place. It was constant snot work, and half of the ship is literally, it was built, you know, studs up for the most part, and then I took the whole thing. It was the bottom half of the ship, and I turned it upside down. And then the top half of the ship was actually hanging on wires for a while, and it got lowered down onto the top half once the bottom, or it got lowered down onto the bottom half once the bottom half was finished. And you know, with all of that, there were these massive sections that weighed, you know, maybe, I don't know, 20, 30 pounds, where they were turned upside down and they had to hold. And not only did they have to hold during display, but they had to hold when you drive in a van on Indiana roads in March.
You know, Indiana roads are really something, aren't they, Josh?
Yeah, something. That's being kind, I think, saying that.
I told Bonahome when we were at Brickworld Indy, I said I might as well have just taken the thing over to Home Depot and put it in the paint shaker. That's what it was so like. True. Every time I would hit a bump, I'm just like, oh no, oh please get there, oh no, please get there. You know, and I was surprised. I was pleasantly surprised that the whole thing actually held up and you know managed to. Oh, I got it there and I got it home, no problem. It was once I unloaded it from the van and the stinking table collapsed. It was pretty cool though. I got to admit, you don't usually get to see a 7-foot-long Lego ship just explode. So there's some sadistic part of me that really actually kind of enjoyed seeing that whole thing destroyed.
Now, see, wasn't that instance when that occurred? Was that a moment when you wish you were one of those people that had a GoPro strapped to their forehead at all times of day?
Amen, brother. Yeah. I just
like a dash cam kind of thing you need.
Of course. That's why. You know, those guys walking around with a GoPro. You know, he might be dropping a 7-foot Lego spaceship later that day. That's why he's wearing it. You never know.
Well, see, now I know. Now I've learned my lesson, and next time, anytime I transport a ship, man, he's right there.
That's the precautionary method you need to use. Yes. As long as it's documented, anything happens, it's good.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I guess we'll say a prayer or you know, a good vibes your way for
a moment of silence for the
moment of silence.
Will you then sort that the entire build back into your parts, or how do you usually do that once you're done with a massive build like that?
Yeah, I'm gonna try. You know, I mentioned to you in conversation before that I'm pretty lazy about sorting, and so I've got boxes over here from builds 3 or 4 years ago. But for the most part, when I'm building, I really do need to have everything in these drawers where they should be, so I've got quick access to them. So I'll take a few months here, probably. It's literally going to take me that long to sort it out. I've got somewhere between 30,000 to 40,000 pieces in that chip. So I'll take the next few months when I get some spare time and sort everything out, put it back in its respective locations, and then in the meantime, that'll give me time to really decide what I want to approach next. And I do have this collaborative with Viva that we're kind of putting together for Brickworld in Chicago. So by the time Chicago's over with, hopefully we'll have everything sorted out, and then this summertime I can start on the next big project. It's always a big project. It can never be something small. So.
Always going big, but that's really cool.
With the Spirit of Fire, I really lucked out. I mean, I was so lucky because I did not measure the interior of my van. And when I got finished with that ship, I didn't measure my door. I didn't measure anything. I just built the ship. And then all of a sudden I realized, I've got to get this out the door, and I've got to get it to fit in the van. And I am not kidding you when I say once I got the seats moved up, I had about 2 inches of space. I had 2 inches of clearance from the roof, and I had 2 inches of space from the seats. If I had built that stupid thing any longer, it would not have fit. So, okay, close shave there. Next time I build a ship, we're going to measure it out, make sure it at least fits in the vehicle so I can display it somewhere,
Yeah, that can always be tough with those big builds for sure. Trying to move those around and making sure you got it. Well, how did you usually store that at your house when you weren't displaying it?
It was here in the Legatorium for quite a while, and actually I've got hooks on the ceiling, and I've got wires that came out of the ship, and so when I needed to, I could actually attach those hooks and wires and levitate the ship about maybe 2.5, 3 feet above my table here. So this big, 7-foot-long ship hanging over my head while I'm working on other projects. But I did that, and then I stored it in the garage for a little while too, which was that was the downfall. It was that table out there in the garage that collapsed. So we'll have to learn that lesson as well. Find another place to store it, or something at least a little more solid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that works well that you have room to store those large builds, though. It's nice that you can keep that on display.
Yeah, I mean, that is something that you have to take into consideration anytime that you're doing something large. Otherwise your wife's not real happy when your build starts to eke its way into the dining room and the living room.
Mhm.
And I know some builders, that have done that for several months. I've seen pictures, of the guys with the build coming through the door and into the living room.
So I have to ask, what does your wife think of these massive builds? Is she a fan of what your Lego builds do? Does she like going to conventions at all with you or anything like that? What is her opinion of your 8-foot Lego build?
She's extremely supportive of this ridiculous obsessive hobby. I don't think she understands it. I think she looks around and goes, "Really, really?" But when I've got a Lego show coming up or something, she's like, "Well, do you need any help?" Or so she's always been really supportive of it. And she doesn't do the shows with me or go to the events so much, mostly because she's just busy all the time. She's always working, and so a lot of the times these shows don't fall at a time where she could do it. Either that, or we do travel a bit with the art that I do. So a lot of our travel, there's only so much traveling that we can do, and sometimes it gets eaten up by these art events that I do.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. So you mentioned obviously you do a lot with art related stuff, but I'd be interested to hear what kind of entertainment do you have on while you build? Is there anything in particular, music or TV shows, anything like that you like to listen to that really helps you channel your inner artist there as you're building?
Yeah,
Masterpiece Theater?
what's that?
Masterpiece Theater?
Yeah, you would think it would be something a little more sophisticated, but unfortunately, it's not. No, I've got this thing where I just love playing the old Bugs Bunny cartoons, the Warner Brothers cartoons,
Okay.
and I've got every one of their DVDs, and I've got this huge collection of Family Guy episodes. I'm down here in the basement, so we don't have the cable hooked up down here, so it's all old school. But I'll pop in DVDs of Family Guy and Bugs Bunny and literally listening to those over and over and over again. It's just, you know what it is? It's a nostalgic thing. Building with the Lego is a nostalgic thing. When I was a kid, there was this wonderful peace and security of being this little kid, sitting there on the floor just building with your Legos. And nowadays, as an adult, things are a lot more hectic and a lot more chaotic. And it's really nice to come down here in the basement and just bury myself in this little world where there's a lot of peace and quiet and those putting those cartoons and stuff because it's kind of what I did when I was a kid. Nothing like getting up on a Saturday morning and having like 4 hours of cartoons, a big old bowl of cereal, and a bunch of Legos sitting around. Does it get any better than that?
No, that is a perfect description of like the best that American youth has to offer. That is awesome. The nostalgia, just trickles back. Yeah.
Yeah. So Saturdays roll around. I'm 47 years old, and I'm still putting in the cartoons, building with the Legos, and getting a big bowl of Captain Crunch.
There you go, living the dream.
Living the dream, baby.
You got to get the cereal and the cartoons, and then the creativity just starts. You start going back to childhood.
That's what kicks it in, right?
Totally.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. So you mentioned Brickworld Indie. You usually try to make it too, and you weren't at Brickworld Chicago last year, were you?
No, it's been several years since I've been able to go to Chicago, and actually, last year Lee Jones and I had a bet going on. Where we were supposed to both bring our Halo ships. It's kind of an incentive plan that we had. So he laid down $1,000 cash, and I laid down a painting worth $1,000 that we would have our ships there. And I had an event that popped up with. It was a nice event. It was with the National Museum of Wildlife Art. So I took that gig, and Lee gets a really nice painting. But it's been a few years because of the art events. They tend to overlap a lot with the shows. And so, again, this year I won't actually be able to attend Brickworld in Chicago because I've got to be out in Jackson, Wyoming for this art show. So some of the other guys here in Indiana will get these builds, and we'll get it up there in kind of a modular fashion. My contribution will go via some of the other builders, and then they all put it together on Thursday.
Well, it's good that they'll still be there.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't been able to go, but at least I've been able to participate in the way of adding to the creations and contributing to these big projects. And that's a really kind of a thing with VLUG because we've got builders that are spread out literally all over the globe. So sometimes shipments will actually come in from overseas for collaborative. And sometimes the builders can make it, and sometimes they can't. And then, it's up to those that are there at the show to be able to put everything in place. So for those of us that are contributing that can't go, we kind of really have to plan everything out ahead of time very carefully, and hope that it gets there in one piece. That's always a challenge of something that's busted up in the mail or something. But anyway, so this year again, the guys will have to take my stuff up, and they'll just kind of throw it in place. Everything should just fit right into place, and hopefully cause no problems for them. But at least I'm still participating, even though I can't make it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's nice. So, Brickworld Indy, you've made it to Brickworld Chicago. Are there any other conventions you've been able to make it to in the past, or some you'd really like to, if you have time, make it to in the future at some point?
Man, I tell you, I would love to get out to Seattle for BrickCon. And again, it's a little bit of a nostalgia thing. I keep mentioning the art, but for years I did a show in that same building, so I know that building very well. I know that area of Seattle very well. And it would just be a lot of fun to see some of the builders that I've not had a chance to meet because we've been separated just by physical distance. But also just to go back to that area and love the restaurants there, love the city of Seattle, and so I'm kind of keeping my fingers crossed that one of these days I can get out to BrickCon and hang out with the guys there and maybe meet some folks that I haven't had a chance to meet.
It is definitely one of those conventions where everyone in the LEGO community ever, we'll just keep using superlatives. The bestest, most awesomest LEGO convention ever. Yeah, so you were right. It would be a fun convention to go to, certainly.
It's this is one of the real surprises for me as I've progressed in the hobby, is that it's very much about building, and I spend months here down in the basement without talking to anyone else as a builder necessarily. So sometimes we'll have phone conversations and things, but it's also about the people, and I'm in the hobby these days as much for the people as I am for the Lego building, and so it's kind of hard for me when a show comes up and I can't make it. But I'm fortunate too that we've got Brickworld Mini here in my hometown. So at least, if nothing else, I can always do that one.
That's a really interesting point that you bring up, the hobby and the people. I was thinking about the interplay between the two. So it's like sometimes you're kind of done with the hobby, but you're not done with the people. And so the people bring you back to the hobby, and then maybe at certain times you're kind of done with the people, and you're still into the hobby. You know what I mean? So it's like between the two, you're just Lego's best customer at all times. That's what I'm making sure, right?
Yeah, that's right. It is. And there have been times when I've not been very interested in building, and I get this way with any creative endeavor. I'm just not motivated, and yet I'll have a deadline in front of me because my friends are relying on me for the collaboration. And I'll come down here and I'll sit down and I'll start building, and before I know it, I'm enjoying myself, and I'm relaxing, and I'm getting away from all of the stresses and all of the other things that I had to deal with. And it was because I felt this connection to the people that caused me to come down here, sit down at the table, and actually really enjoy the building process again. So there it is. I mean, it's a perfect example. Brickworld's coming up, and I've got this part of the collab that I need to do. I may not be motivated to build, but what I find is it's like going to the gym. You've got a friend that says, I'm going to meet you there at the gym, and so you're like, okay, I'm going to go to the gym. And then once you get there, you don't mind it. You're happy to work out. You're happy to do your thing. That's very much the way it is with the building process. Anytime I'm burned out, the friends bring me back. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Totally. And then just to kind of drive the point home even more, and sometimes you go to the gym to get away from your friends. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, no. Don't talk to me right now. I'm just going to go build.
I'm at the gym, bro. Yeah, exactly. Very nice, very nice.
Yeah, it does work like that sometimes. So, Mark, do you have any particular favorite memories or stories from the conventions you made it to over the years? Maybe anything you've done with Virtual Leg over the years? Anything like that?
Well, some of the collabs to begin with, I'm really excited about. Ages ago, we did this story of the Lord of the Rings, and that was a really fun way to do a collaboration, not just create this this big visual, but have a story that went along with it. And then, we started pursuing that further because we really liked that idea, and so we did others, with the Wizard of Oz, and then last year it was Homer's Odyssey, and so just I guess I wouldn't call it a story necessarily, but the concept of doing storytelling with so many people and all of that is a lot of fun. And then as far as stories are concerned, we could talk a little bit about Phipson's his way of dismantling his creations at Brickworld. Everybody else is kind of taking their stuff down here, right? And they're sitting over here, and we're all boxing it up and everything else. And the first time it happened, we did a big countdown, and Chris just took the entire section of his collaboration and just launched it into orbit. And it ended up in buckets everywhere, and it's kind of become a thing anymore. Where at least with him, and a lot of the times I'll collaborate with Chris. He and I have done several collaborations. We took Minas Tirith, and there was the Witch's Castle, and all that. It just gets trashed at the end of the show. There's no preservation whatsoever in it. I get such a kick out of that. But I love that because he's saying, okay, this is Lego. It's not meant necessarily to be on the shelf indefinitely. This is about the building process, and so let's have some fun with this. Let's just blow this thing up,
Yeah, that is really. I remember getting last year when you guys did the Odyssey build, the virtual collaborative Odyssey build. On the teardown day, we have some videos somewhere I know of them like punching down the doors of the city and
Very
just
aggressive.
Everything. Yeah.
Remarkably aggressive, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Chris, maybe I haven't talked to him, but maybe he'd be pleased about how the Spirit of Fire met its end. I didn't take it apart. The whole thing just exploded, so it's following tradition.
Yeah, that's true. It met a glorious end there. The table collapsed underneath it.
Unreal.
Very nice. So, from your childhood or even from today, do you have an all-time favorite Lego set then, one that really stands out to you that you've enjoyed playing with?
Yeah. And it goes back to that nostalgia thing. But there's a set. I think what is it? I've got it sitting over here. 6075. It's the classic castle. That's the gold castle. That was kind of. I think that came out maybe in '85 or something when I was kind of getting towards the end of my Lego building as a kid. And by that point, I was. I had this big train set up in my grandparents' house that my grandfather had, and I cleared out all of the trains, and I built the castle, and I had soldiers all over the place, and it was really kind of the end of that whole era of me learning how to build as a kid and enjoying all of that and turning it into a larger project. And it was kind of a precursor to what I do now as an adult, where we do these large projects, whether it's the ships that I build or whether it's the collaborations that we do through the lugs or whatever. And so I've just got these really fond memories of. I bought 2 of those castles. It was the first time I ever bought 2 of the same set. And I started manipulating the design and making it larger and kind of branching out on my own. So it's this real nice sentimental memory of that set. And if I could only have one set, I think that would probably be it. Those sentimental, those memories related. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think that's one of those sets that a lot of people have really fond memories of, being like the one of the first castles and just the really iconic set that a lot of people know about. So it is. Yeah,
and it launched quite a line. It was the start of quite a long series of creations that are even going on today. With castle stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that castle line that obviously has been going on for so many years now, like you said, is one of the more popular lines too. So I know a lot of people have enjoyed those sets over the years.
Yeah.
And before we end here, if you wouldn't mind, do you think you could take your video and kind of show your build area a little bit, maybe talk about how you organize your parts a little bit for people who might be interested?
Yeah. Let's see if I can do this here. Tilt the computer up just a little bit, and you can see behind me that I've got a series of smaller shelves, and this is for the smaller parts. there's a label literally on every shelf, or every drawer, I'm sorry. And it's labeled the same way that Bricklink categorizes all of their parts. And this worked out really well for me. So I used Bricklink's method, and I figured, well, they knew what they were doing when I discovered it, and so, you know, I probably couldn't be much better. Let's see if I can pan around here just a little further. So I've got larger drawers over on this side with, you know, some of the larger pieces, the larger plates, the larger bricks. These are all the smaller pieces. And then, let's see if we can do this. Over on this side, come on, come on.
Give it a second to come around here. There you go.
Yeah, more of the drawers and so forth.
Okay.
And then I've got some of my sets and, you know, some things, awards from the shows and things sitting on top there. So that's the Lego touring. That's the dime tour right there.
Okay, very cool. So you seem to have a pretty nice setup going on there. Then that works fairly well. You find for your building style.
Yeah. This has been great. Everything is labeled, like I said. So if I forget where something is, I've got, you know, almost immediate access to it. And everything's kind of, I'm surrounded. It's a U shape here, so I'm completely surrounded, and just about every part is within, you know, a couple feet. And most of the time I can just turn around and grab something, so I don't have to walk across the room or anything like that. And then underneath the table here is, and in the closet over there, and in the garage, and across the street, and across the city is, you know, additional Lego, the overflow stuff. Lots of overflow bins.
Yeah, all sorts of extra little bins. Yeah, you can never have too many of those for different pieces there. Very cool. That's a really awesome setup you got there. And you actually have several years ago, we were discussing this before we started the show here. Matthew, you actually sent, like, was it a message to Mark asking him for like more photos of the way he organizes his parts?
Yes, so this was 6 years ago, many moons ago, a different president ago. And what was my comment? I'm looking, you posted a photo of your build space, and I believe I left a comment to the tune of, could you post some photos of the labeling on the bins? I'm really intrigued by your sorting method. I've always thought of sorting by Bricklink categories, but I've never found a way to implement it. Curious how you have. And then you, being the wonderful, wonderful fan that you are, a fellow Lego fan, you went and posted 2 photos of like a detailed kind of snapshot of how like your labels look, and then a cool little photo like top down looking into the storage bins.
Oh,
and
nice.
I was tickled pink myself, and I always think that's kind of awesome. You know, just looking at those photos still. So, but yeah, A+. That's just it's a very cool storage system, definitely.
Good. Well, I'm glad I was able to help. That's nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll make sure to include those 2 photos in the description, so people want to get a closer look at the labels he uses or what those look like. You can see those in the close-up photos that he has online conveniently. So. Mark, it was great having you on the show tonight. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us and talk with us about some of your builds and some of the inspiration for your artwork and the way you do your parts and everything. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to do it, guys. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yes, thank you so much.
And if you want to just give people, what's the best place for people to keep updated with your builds and what you're doing?
You know, I'm pretty well balanced these days, so they can either go to Flickr and look me up, or they can go to MOCpages. I still prefer MOCpages. It's got a really nice presentation, and I like to do storytelling. So, have a look at either one of those sites, and hopefully we'll have some new stuff here coming up in the near future.
Totally.
Okay. Sounds good. I'll make sure to include links to your MOCpages and Flickr in the description of the video so people check that out and make that simple for you, and make sure you start following Mark over there, and you don't want to miss his next massive Halo ship, so you got to make sure you start following him on one of those sites there and keep up to date with everything he's doing. So, and I wanted to remind you to check out the Brick Builders Club at brickbuildersclub.com as well. You can start receiving your monthly box of really cool Lego content like custom Lego parts and stickers and even t-shirts. So you can find that at brickbuildersclub.com. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I'd encourage you to subscribe to the YouTube channel here at Beyond the Brick if you want to keep up to date with all of our videos that we release, the weekly show episodes, and any of our convention interviews as well. Make sure you don't miss any of those by subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching, and we will see you soon.